how is America ever going to get better? Don't just think about this election. Just think about the big picture. How are we ever going to get better if our two choices are evil or lesser evil? At some point, for America to get better, you have to vote for good. You have to vote for a party and for politicians who don't want to go into government and work for the billionaire class and work for these giant multinational corporations who are holding our government by the throat. We need to vote for politicians who want to go in there and actually work for the people. It's really that simple. And so when people want to sit and blame Trump for everything, Trump to me has always just been a symptom. The disease that is destroying America is unchecked, unregulated capitalism that now has a hold over not just, the working class, but over both corporate parties in Washington. And so when I realized all that, I knew that I was going to take a lot of flack, but at some point, if this has been going on for the last half century, brave people have to stand up and take their power back from the Democratic Party. Brave people have to stand up and say, I'm not going to allow you to take my vote for granted anymore. Because if we keep doing this, they will just continue to take our vote for granted. And one thing that really concerned me, there's a report in NPR out that Wall Street has given more money this cycle. They've given almost $1 billion this cycle to both on the 2020, campaign. And they've given more money to the Democratic Party than to the Republican Party. Now, basically, it's like, that's legal bribery, right? And so
Yes.
I don't care how scary you think Trump is. What's scarier to me is that Democrats are allowed to be bribed by Wall Street and then pretend like they serve the people, because we're essentially handing them power with zero pushback or accountability. And so what ends up happening is, look, if I support and stand in solidarity with every leftist and everyone who is deciding to vote for Biden. Like, I'm not a vote shamer on either side. So like, if you've made the decision to vote for Biden, I support you in doing that. But I wish that people would also support those of us who are brave enough to not vote for one of the corporate candidates who is just going to continue this oligarchic and corporate system that is not working for the majority of this country. I wish they would give us a little bit of respect too. And we don't get that respect. And I get that because I understand that people are scared. But I also think that fear is what the Democratic Party has weaponized, right? Because just think of it real simplistically. It is possible to beat Donald Trump and fight for the meaningful change that we need to move this country forward, right? You can do both, but the corporate Democrats aren't doing that. The DNC isn't doing that, right? They voted against Medicare for all. They voted against legalizing marijuana. They voted against banning corporate lobbyists to serve on the board of the DNC. They are voting against all of the systemic changes we need and then saying, well, Trump is so bad, so you got to vote for us because we're going to save you. And it's like, how are you saving us if you're participating in the same corrupt system that the Republicans are participating in? And so this idea of like, let's just keep voting for the lesser of two evils, A, it's never going to make our country better. And B, is the Democratic Party even the lesser of two evils when everything they're doing is emboldening the greater evil, right? How is Pelosi and the Democrats, quote unquote, resisting Trump when they're voting for his military budget? How are the corporate Democrats, resisting fascism when they're funding fascism? How are they resisting him when they're voting for his authoritarian programs like the Patriot Act, which is mass surveillance, or when they're voting for militarized policing? And so when you come to unpack our political system, you realize that we on the left get demonized as like, oh, they're so radical and they're so extreme. I'd like to open people's eyes up to the fact that, in my view, what's extreme are two corporate parties who support endless wars. In my view, what is extreme are two corporate parties who bail out Wall Street and giant corporations when the economy tanks, and then working people, lose their homes and their livelihoods. What's extreme for me is two corporations who continue to provide fossil fuel subsidies to the big oil companies, despite the fact that the climate crisis is bearing down upon us. What's extreme to me is that, both corporate parties support this blind capitalistic system that again is not working for the majority of the people. 78% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. 2 billionaires now own more wealth than half of our entire nation. So what's extreme to me is the corporate duopoly. And what's just and compassionate and reasonable to me is the left and our progressives who are fighting for a Medicare for all single payer healthcare system. You know, what is reasonable and compassionate to me is progressives and leftists who are fighting for a Green New Deal to save our planet. You know, what's reasonable and compassionate to me are leftists and progressives who are fighting for, you know, a $25 an hour living wage and to bring democracy into the workplace with things like worker cooperatives to give the working class more power against these CEOs who just keep making more and more money while everyone else is doing worse and worse.